Is everybody about ready to, I've got about 30 seconds. Just want to make sure everybody's ready to begin. Okay. At this time, I'd like to call to order the Lynn Haven Community Redevelopment Agency, known as the CRA. Item number 1 is the call to order, so moving to item number 2. This is public commentary. If there's anyone here from the public or staff or the board, I guess it wouldn't include the board, the public who has a comment they'd like to make about anything regarding the CRA, this is your opportunity. Mr. Walker.
Good afternoon. Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. Citizen. You all know I'm on the advisory committee for CRA. This is separate. This is public
Mr.
commentary.
Walker, will you turn that mic just, there you go. Thank
That
you.
better?
Perfect.
All right, guys.
And that helps with the people listening at home. So
Okay.
they can hear you.
Good. Thank you. This is public commentary, and there are only 3 people in this room that were here when the CRA was started. That's not an excuse, because you are the board and you should be kept attuned to everything. The original concept of the CRA was very forthcoming and laid out directly by a consultant. He advised us that in time we would only get enough money, maybe in 5 to 10 years, to start doing our projects. The projects we would get done would be very small until we would increase our money. Thusly, our income would mount up to a good reserve, which was kept by the city. In 10 years, we did finally get it up to $1 million. You will notice that in this last go-around, we are being held restrained on what we can do in the year 2019. That is because we overextended ourselves. Our reserves were at $1 million. They're now down to probably $600,000. You'll notice that our income is $300,000 plus. Our outlay is $300,000 plus. That is due to the fact, and the reserves are down, is because the fact that we committed ourselves to some bad decisions over the years, and we diminished our funds. This last run around, we were told that the funds would diminish because we extended ourselves in Sheffield Park. Okay, that's fine. However, you notice that we cannot do what we want to do because our reserves are down and our income doesn't really get along with us. I just wanted to make you aware that in the budget here, as we're going to go through in a few minutes, some things have to be changed. Some things have to be done to make us get our reserves back up where we can start doing things for the citizens of this town. That is my public commentary, and I hope you take a look at this strong budget things, and what we did in the past didn't really work. Bad decisions. So I want to thank you for that, and be addressing things as we go through the budget.
Appreciate your time. Anyone else? Okay, at this time, then I would move to item number 3, motion for approval of the meeting minutes from August 14th, 2018.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for approval of the meeting minutes from August 14th. Any discussion, corrections, or notations? There appear to be none. Any corrections or discussion from the public? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so the meeting minutes from August the 14th stand approved. We'll move on to the regular agenda. Item number 4 is resolution number 2018-09-01. This resolution is adopting a tentative Community Redevelopment Agency budget for fiscal year 2018-2019. Mr. White, do you have that resolution ready?
Yes, ma'am.
If you could read that for us, please.
Resolution number 2018-09-01. A resolution adopting a tentative budget for the Lynn Haven Community Redevelopment Agency for the fiscal year 2018-2019 and appropriating for the purposes specified redevelopment trust funds in amounts specified for disbursement according to said budget for the fiscal year 2018-2019.
Thank you. Is there a motion for acceptance of the resolution?
I was going to suggest that we have a public hearing before, right?
Doesn't the board have a moment to?
Sure, you can do either order. I thought you were entertaining an approval already.
No, actually, just a motion for discussion is what I was looking for. Is that okay?
That's absolutely fine.
Okay. Is there a motion for discussion of the resolution?
So moved.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
So there's been a motion and a second for discussion of the resolution for adopting a tentative community redevelopment agency. We do have a public hearing following this in our regularly scheduled meeting, but at this point, I thought the board might like to ask questions or have discussion since it's on our CRA agenda. So that's acceptable. There's been a motion and a second. Any deference from the public? Not yet, unless you object to our having a discussion of it. Okay, thank you. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Friend,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes. Aye. Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. Okay, at this time, are there any questions from the board about the budget that you would like to have clarified before we go into the public hearing later? Or, yes.
Yes, Mayor, I have a question. On the supplies and operating, the $96,000 that we're talking about, I'd just like to know, what is that for? What is that to be used on?
We'll be focusing our efforts in the upcoming fiscal year on 4 projects, and they are kind of reflected in the $96,000 for supplies operating, because these expenditures for this project would fall under that account. We will be finishing up the historic walk at Kane Griffin Park. The Sheffield Park restroom renovation will be the second project. Some beautification on Florida Avenue is anticipated, and also the installation of some directional signs along Highway 77 that kind of show what kind of features we have along the Florida Avenue corridor.
I'm sorry, the one thing I didn't get was, which bathrooms were you going to renovate?
At Sheffield Park.
Sheffield Park.
And if you look at the overall concept, if you look at the master plan, we had the renovation of the restrooms included in it, but it wasn't done due to some limitations in the budget. So this is really the only thing that's missing. And when I mentioned it to the city manager, that he was okay with that, to add this to the list to get this completed.
Okay. And then I had another question.
Sure.
Under professional services, you have $10,000. Exactly what does that go for?
These professional services,
No.
they also go toward some of the projects that we anticipate. So some of the expenses, let's say if I have to hire a surveyor for the signs that I want to install at along Highway 77, that expense wouldn't fall under supplies operating. It would be professional services. So we're talking about the same project, but there are 2 separate accounts that would show some expenses in that regard.
So surveyors, is that what the whole $10,000 will be used on?
I don't know at this point. It's either survey work, or if I have to hire a professional engineer to get, let's say, some plumbing or some electrical work done at the restrooms. Those are that kind of professional services.
Okay. Okay, I think that's, in the training, I talked to the city manager yesterday about this. I wanted to ask about this one, though, the training certificate, functions.
I looked into that a little
Yeah.
bit more after talking to you, and there are some functions there, but also he went ahead and put in one of the employee policies that we have. We allow people to go back to school.
Okay.
The city pay for it, and Ben's going to sign a certificate where he commits more time to the city, up to 5 years, I think it is. So that is part of tuition for school.
That $5,000 is for your tuition?
Yes, ma'am.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Does anyone else on the board have a question or a concern about this budget?
Mayor, if I may,
Yes, go ahead, please.
I had a couple of questions as well, but I was fortunate enough to be able to get up with the city manager and get the answers. But I just want to relate, what those questions were so the board knows.
Thank you.
One of the questions was obviously the supply and equipment or operations. I did question that as well. And the way it was explained to me was because the threshold of the money fell beneath the capital outlay. That's why it's listed under supplies instead of listed as capital outlay. Hence why I had to ask why, those numbers. And then I appreciate you providing those answers. The other question I had was the percent differences with the property taxes for the revenue. I questioned why we had a 13% increase in Lynn Haven's tax revenue versus the county's. And the city manager explained to me that the county has chosen to lower their property taxes, which has affected that percentage. And the last question I had was the change in your salary, and that was due to a percentage change between the CRA and the EDA. So I think all the questions that I had were answered, and I'm good with it, ma'am. Thank you, Mayor.
I appreciate you sharing that with the rest of the board. Commissioner Tender?
I'm sorry, thank you.
No, this is for.
And we discussed this yesterday about your salary. Wasn't that you told me that you were going to hire another person for the CRA?
No, the president of the committee came to me and wanted to discuss that they felt like the committee was maybe not getting enough work, time of men's to commit to CRA. Right now, I do not believe that we need to bring someone on, so what I did was split. We did have a 60-40 split, 60% time a CRA. Now it's 80% and 20% city.
Okay.
So
that's
we're gonna
where
try
the
that.
16,000 increase comes
Yes,
in?
ma'am.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just trying to ask the questions so I'm fair when it
Okay,
comes time to
okay.
talk about it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, even though we have a public hearing coming up at 5 o'clock on the CRA as well, because we have people in the audience during this board meeting, if you have a question that you would like to ask now and get out of the way before the public hearing, you're quite welcome to do that. So are there any questions from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Janet Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. Thank you, Commissioner Tinder. My one question was on that $96,000 figure. I appreciate that. My
Mrs.
other
Walker,
question,
could you give me just one moment because I need to answer this question?
Okay.
For just one moment. Thank you. I apologize.
not a problem.
This is the resolution for the CRA meeting.
Right.
It's talking about doing a hearing and approval during this meeting.
Yes.
Is that what you intended to do? You intended to do it?
Well, when I asked for the motion, that's where I was headed, and then when you said the 5 o'clock, that's what I'm looking at. So, I apologize. Actually, we have the general fund and we have the millage rate are the only two things that we have there. And then during the second public hearing, it's the motion to adopt. So I don't think the intent is to adopt now. I think it was the intent was to let the board discuss. That was what I thought.
That's fine. I think the resolution just
Is that
not worded
okay?
well.
Okay. I apologize. Would you
Not a
please
problem.
begin again?
My question was regarding the last item on the CRA budget called under grants and aids.
Yes.
The design and construction assistance in the amount of $75,000 in this new fiscal year. Is that a grant or an aid, or does it matter? And when it does come in under grants and aids, can it only be used for specific items as an expenditure?
Okay. Ben, those are two questions. Could you answer both of those? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The amount that is listed under design and construction assistance, it really summarizes the budget for the storefront assistance program and the residential incentive program. In addition to those two programs, I would like to add a third one, which is a residential paint program. This is new, but it will address all the buildings, the residential buildings within the CRA that could use a fresh coat of paint. I have looked at other CRAs that offer this. They've been extremely successful with this. And I'm suggesting to allocate $20,000 as part of the $75,000 toward this new program. So if the board approves this budget today, I will come back in a couple of weeks with a draft application that and the rules basically for this new incentive that says here, this is, if you would like to participate in this paint program, these are the rules and this is the application form. And then the board can decide if we want to proceed with that or cancel it.
Okay, I appreciate that, and we did have a conversation about that earlier this week, and I think it's a very innovative and forward-thinking idea, and I think it's something that could beautify Lynn Haven, is my personal opinion, and so I wish you success with that endeavor.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mrs. Walker, did you have one more question? Sure, go ahead.
I would like to say I very much appreciate us spending money on regular folks in this community. There are some senior citizens especially whose house is adorable, but it's kind of drab. And in order for them to have extra money, they may have to forego necessary items. And so this program to me is extremely worthwhile, much more worthwhile than giving money to a developer to put in his pocket and possibly leave town after a year or two. So I appreciate the new thought put into this new program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Tender, if I could get one more public commentary, and then I'll come back, unless you were addressing Mrs. Walker, will you?
No, but I have a
Okay,
question about
okay,
the new program.
Okay, Mr. Walker. And while he's coming to the podium, I wanted to say to Ben in public, and so everybody could hear my thoughts, I had, after he talked to me about getting the paint for houses, if that's something that, the board approves and it comes forward, I was even thinking that most of our senior high schools require community service for graduation, and we could probably get a lot of volunteers from Mosley and North Bay Haven and some of the other schools that might even come in if they had the paint and paint these homes for the senior citizens. So I think that would be, I'm seeing all kinds of possibilities. I'm sorry, Mr. Walker.
All right. I enjoy listening. Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. As I look through the budget, some of this stuff, and this I'm speaking as on the advisory committee, some of this stuff we do not get to see, okay? What you see here is what you approve, and you just saw something where you would approve this budget, and that would have made that program go through, and the public would know nothing about it, okay? What I'm getting at here is I look through the budget here down, and we got R&M of vehicles.
Well, let me back up to that one. I misunderstood because we're having a public hearing this evening to discuss this. So how can you say the public wouldn't? No, I misunderstood something there. Help me again. You had not seen this budget as an advisory committee?
Budget.
Okay.
Not a breakdown like this. What we saw was a project for 2019.
Okay.
That's what we saw.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. In the R&M of vehicles, it's got $1,500. I didn't know the CRA had a vehicle. I assume we're loaning it. Let me back up something here. The statement Mrs. Tinder made a while ago is the CRA was hiring, asked the city manager if they were hiring a new person. I don't want to insult anybody, but according to Florida statutes, CRA is not hired by city manager. It's hired by you, commissioners. So you would have to know about that, and you would have to give approval. Back to the R&M vehicles, 1,500 is projected for the budget. 1,250 is under possible. I didn't know we had a vehicle in the CRA. Okay, and next thing is we went over the supplies and operating expenses. You will notice that in the last year's budget, and I'm referencing it, we spent $689,652. We only had an income of $304,692, and I referenced that in my public commentary. This year, we're getting $300,023,894, $323,884 outcome. That goes back to the public commentary again.
Okay?
We hit the law of diminishing returns. We're usually spending more than we're earning. The next step would be probably floating bonds, which we're trying to avoid. Reference to the salary. We were told that 60-40 split was going to be because the EDA office was formed, and CRA director would be sharing in that job. Now we notice that it's dropped down from 60-40 to 60-20. The comments that were made by the public was, why don't you get a new EDA director and that's it, and let CRA take care of itself. It looks like we're going that way. Is that the way we're going to go? We're going back to having our CRA director?
I don't think we've had a discussion in that light, Mr. Walker, so I
Okay.
certainly can't answer the
All right.
question.
But it noticed that the salary is being changed at the direction of somebody. The salary of the CRA director is set by the CRA board.
Well, you're looking at the CRA board, and I think we haven't approved anything yet. This is a suggestion, this is a discussion only, so.
All
But does
right.
anyone else have a comment, Mr. White? or-
To answer your question, it was a percentage. Nobody's reset his salary.
Yeah.
James came to me wanting to look at hiring someone else. If you hire another person for CRA,
Would you use James's full name just for the public, if you can?
Watersted.
Thank you, thank you.
James Hance.
Thank you.
Which is over the CRA committee. If you hire another individual to help in the CRA, as you said earlier, it will diminish your amount that you can do projects even that much more. So part of the compromise that Ben and I discussed at length to come to the board to hear today is to look at converting it to 80-20, which we would devote more time he has to work on CRA projects and see how that works. Ben and I both do EDA work, so we kind of tag team a lot of it. He goes to meetings for me if I can't go, and try to represent us. So that's where a lot of that comes in some special other projects.
Yeah, I fully understand, and I appreciate that, because we all have to work together. I know that. We have to do that. Ben is on the beautification board, he's on the pension board, he's on the
If you can bring
EDA
it to
board.
you can bring.
EDA board, et cetera, and I understand that. So, and it was of concern of us when we first started this. Thank you for considering.
You're very welcome. Did anyone else from the public have a comment or a question about this budget during this? We've got a few more minutes before we move to the budget workshop. Thank you. Anything else from the board that you might have thought of? Yes, Commissioner Tender.
I just wanted to ask Ben, what is the R&M vehicles? I mean, that's not a vehicle, is it, for $1,500? What is that money used for?
I can answer it. That money Ben has to go to meetings and such, so we do, sometimes we have a vehicle, sometimes we don't, sometimes he would charge some fuel, but also we have a vehicle for the city, and he needs repairs from time to time on it, so the city furnishes the vehicle, and when he uses that vehicle, the fuel gets charged over to the CRA.
Okay, so that's for fuel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I wanted to interject that Mayor does attend EDA, various meetings and luncheons and different meetings with City Manager and Ben as well. So we have one more. Anyone else? Okay, at this time, we'll move to the last item, which is adjournment of the CRA meeting for today.
Mayor, if I could first. All right,
Yes.
I figured out the confusion.
Okay.
You actually, as a CRA board, you have a resolution to adopt during this meeting, which
Okay.
is basically your recommendation
So we adopt it twice.
to you when you put on your other hats as the commission
Okay.
later. So they're worded a little differently. So yes, I would adopt the resolution in your package. It's 2018-0901.
Yes.
And you have a similar resolution that you'll do at 5 o'clock.
What's different about the one at 5?
It's really not different.
I'm just curious, I'm not questioning you. I just want-
It comes back to this dual role you have, where some cities, their CRA board would be totally different people
Exactly.
making a recommendation
I've
to
got
the
it.
elected
Okay,
officials.
so we're making a recommendation to ourselves, basically.
Basically.
Got it. Okay, now that makes complete sense. At this time, I think I already asked for a motion earlier, did I not? No, I asked for a motion to discuss the resolution.
Right, so
At this time, I would like to ask for a motion before we adjourn to adopt as the CRA board a resolution for a tentative community redevelopment agency budget to present to the commission at the 5 o'clock hearing.
So move.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. White, and no objection, I assume, from the public. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Friend,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender, Commissioner Barnes,
Aye.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. So the resolution is adopted and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you. That was a bit confusing.
It was.
For you as well.
Well, when I realized there were two resolutions.